Welcome to the Austin Center for Spiritual Living. This recording is of a talk presented on the morning of March 18th, 2007 by Rev.Dr. Richard Imprescia. The title of the talk is The Law of Attraction.
Yeah, thank you. Step by step, taking it one step at a time, one day at a time. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? To some people. And you know, that's really what so much of life is about, is taking it step by step. We're all excited about all of the techniques and things that we are learning these days and how it's going to transform our lives. It's like it was when I first got into this teaching. It was like, oh my Lord, I never knew there was such a thing as this. And then I find out that there are steps that you also have to take. Before we get on with what I'm going to talk about this morning, I want to point out that you were given a little card when you came in this morning. On one side of it, there's some basic principles. It says 6 keys to practical spirituality. It's titled Insights to Fuller Living. This is not related to it's related to what I'm talking about this morning, but this was not prepared to necessarily accompany my sermon that starts in a moment. If I ever stop talking here. On the other side, it says Austin Center for Spiritual Living Sunday service meeting at, and gives all the basic information. Everybody have one of these cards? Okay. You know, the purpose for this is not, well, it can be a lesson to you because these are very significant things. On the other hand, give it to a friend. I mean, if you don't feel too vulnerable in saying, you know, you might be interested in some of these things, these are principles by which I am living my life. The first one really got me when I came across it. Your self-concept will always incarnate in your life as action. What kind of a self-concept do we have? Anyway, this morning is a third in a series of 4 talks that I've been giving on under the broad general theme of, I think in our website we gave it as the basis of the secret, something like that. And the week before last, I started out by talking about, what did I talk about? Anybody remember what the title of the talk was the week before last? It's in the bulletin. At any rate, I talked about that. Oh, and it's not in the bulletin. No, that was last week. Last week was the formula. That was the 11th. Anyway. The what? Oh, is it really a secret? That's what I talked about. And I'm not going to go back over that. You know the answer to that. And then today I'm going to talk about the law of attraction, and next week I'm going to talk about some of the essentials for it to be able to work. It's an interesting kind of a thing. How exciting this has become for a lot of people. And there's nothing new in it. It is no secret. It's information that's been around for thousands of years. And its concepts have been articulated in all of the Enlightenment traditions of the world. And yet somehow or another, it has secreted itself. These ideas have been secreted within the deeper wells of consciousness of people, and just this phenomenon of this movie that's come along is beginning to stir things up and bring it to the surface where people are looking at things and they're saying, yes, this is true. I know it's true. So they're hungry. And it is so exciting. I just have to stop here for a moment and tell you, I am so excited about this. It's like after being in the ministry for 30 years, after having been exposed to these teachings for 45 years, I can remember and re-experience the feelings I had when I first discovered these principles, and I'm jazzed. It's like, I've been born again, folks. Not in the sense that a lot of people tend to think of it, but maybe so. Maybe it is. Maybe I just haven't understood what the others have been talking about. And yet, there's been a lot of resistance that has been brought up. Not a lot of resistance. Well, there's one article that I'm familiar with that was in Newsweek magazine, and they did quite a bit with it online, on the internet. And It's interesting, but this one article has been quoted over and over and over and interpreted and all kinds of comments on it. And the article was entitled Is the Secret a Lie? And I had talked very briefly about this in the first session. But I want to read something to you here that was stated by a Harvard psychologist by the name of Carol Kaufman. She says something that I absolutely believe, totally. She says, no, this I don't believe. Basically, it is chaos theory. I don't think she knows what chaos theory is, but that's okay. Then she goes on and she says, I don't think you can attract things to you, but if you are profoundly open to opportunity, then when ambiguous events occur, you notice them. I think what positive thinking does is raise your consciousness to the possibilities. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. We're raising our consciousness to the possibilities that are around us. But it is more than that. And we will get to that in a little while. And this, of course, is where the big arguments come in. And I'm not going to address those that want to show us where we're wrong. Today we're going to be talking about on the theme of the law of attraction. And I'm going to go over 4 basic points. The first one is there is a basic principle. That is, there is one infinite power and presence within which we all live and move and have our being. The second is, and that power and presence is very personal. It is expressed through love as well as a lot other things. Nothing more personal than love. And we're talking about the love of God, the love of the universe. And then the second point that I want to discuss is there is an impersonal aspect to it that makes it all possible. Makes it possible to activate that principle, the law of attraction, in your life. And then I'll discuss some few general comments on that. And then the third point is I want to talk about a model for how this can really work that was useful for me years ago when I discovered this, and I thought that I was the only one that ever knew this, until I find that everybody else who's thought about this very much has come up with the same thing. And Michael Beckwith, on one of his interviews with Oprah, said the same thing. And I said, doggone it, Michael, did you steal that from me? I mean, he wasn't there. He was on television, of course. And then finally, I'm going to talk about the process that we talked about last week, the formula, ask, believe, receive, and just to kind of tie things together. First of all, let's look at the basic principle. This basic principle is that there is one infinite power that is all around us. It permeates all of time and space. It is it. There is nothing other than that. And we are made in its image and likeness. We call it God. Some people call it the infinite intelligence. It's known by all different names through different Enlightenment traditions. But there is this one thing. It is without limit. And we are one with it. We're made in its image and likeness, which means that we are characterized by what characterizes it. Now, one of the wonderful things about this is that this power, this principle, this intelligence knows no favorites. It doesn't matter who you are, what your religion is. There is no chosen people. There is no chosen race. There is no right religion. This intelligence, doesn't give a hoot. All it does is love. And that is a very personal kind of an interaction. So that's the principle. Now, there's another aspect to this principle or this power and presence, and that is a very impersonal aspect. And that impersonal aspect is what makes possible our ability to be able to experience life and experience it fully. Let's look at that impersonal aspect. It's called the law. Now, interestingly, we are addressing this morning the law of attraction, but there are many, many other laws, aren't there? No. There's one law. There is what Ernest Holmes and others for the ages have referred to as the law of cause and effect. There's a law of manifestation. There's a law of correspondence. There's the law of mental equivalence. There's a law of mind action is a term that Raymond Charles Barker used, a great religious science minister, the late Charles Barker. And there is the law of attraction, which is just another statement or expression of the same idea. And you'll see as we go through how, and the most common term is the law of cause and effect. But this idea of attraction is very excited right now because people think, I've come along and all of a sudden I realize that there's ability for me to be able to do the right thing, say the right words, be introduced to the principles by the right wisdom teachers, and I'm going to be able to set my thoughts in such a way I'm going to attract everything to me. Well, kind of. But that is the law of cause and effect, working in its own way. But I like the idea of law of attraction because I like the idea of being able to pull something to me. There are various descriptions of this. Like attracts like. Birds of a feather flock together. You've got it. You know the law of attraction. People have talked about it for years and years. Thoughts become things. Exactly. And one that I really like, what you think about, you bring about. That's right. It's all speaking to the law of attraction. What you give your attention to is where the power of the universe is going to go, and it's a manifesting power, and it will produce or create the circumstances within which and around which you are going to, or with which you are going to be able to pull into your experience what you need to experience. Now, a couple of facts about the law itself. It never ends. You don't turn it off and turn it on. Just like the law of gravity. You don't turn the law of gravity on and turn the law of gravity off. It just is. And it's an always present field of influence, like the law of gravity again. Of course, gravity, you have to have substance, don't you? You have to have bodies attracting each. Don't misinterpret this now, like the sun and the earth is what I'm talking about. This law of attraction, this law of cause and effect is infinite in its extent. If God is unlimited, then the aspect of God that we call law must also be unlimited. It is without bounds. It is infinite. It is always working. I've already implied that. It's totally dependable. That is, it's going to do what it does today, what it did yesterday, and what it'll do 10,000 years from now. And it is totally, or it gives totally reproducible results. If I do today in the same manner that I did yesterday, I'm going to get the same result. Isn't that wonderful? And isn't it scary? Because we can look and see we have been reproducing in our experience some things over and over and over. If you continue to do the way you've done before, you're going to get the same results. If you are very success-minded, if you are very open and inclusive, if you are very loving and grateful for life, and I can go on, you're going to experience more and more of the same. If you're fearful, if you believe in lack and limitation, what are you doing? You're creating an atmosphere that's going to attract the same sort of thing into your life. Now, the interesting thing about this is the law of cause and effect, or the law of attraction. Let's stay with that. It works both ways. You say, oh boy, I can set myself up and learn and say my magic mantra and be, somebody activate my kundalini and give me Shaktipat. No, these are all valid things. If you're a yogi of any sort, you'll know that they are. But people get excited because they're strange words, you know. Well, okay. But it's more than just what you do to yourself that's active here. Because this law of attraction works both ways. You set up an attractive field. I'll talk about this by my little model in a while. At the same time, everything has associated with it its own field, and you are being attracted to, and it is attracted to you. I love what Ernest Holmes, our founder, said. What you seek is seeking you. wait a minute, how can that? When I first read that, it must have been 40 years ago, and I thought, well, you mean there's the new Jaguar out there that I'm seeking is actually seeking me? And I thought, well, that's kind of nonsense, and it must be a metaphorical statement, and it must, just a figure of speech. No, folks, it's absolutely true. It's just like the gravitation. This is a mental gravitation we're talking about. Each body is attracted to the other to some extent. Now, let's take a look at the model that I came up with years ago that I was so pleased and a little bit arrogant about. I like to explain it in terms of an analogy. Some of you are old enough to remember the old dial-type radios that we used to have in our cars. You remember those? You'd turn the knob until you come in tune. Anybody not remember that? Oh, I don't even want to talk to you. You're just way too young for me. You'd be driving down the road, and you're listening to something that's very interesting, and it begins to fade a little bit or get a little cracked. So you'd reach over and you tune it just a little bit more, and you get a little better position, and it'd come back in, and you continue to get farther and farther from the transmitter or the station that's sending out the signal, and so you tune it again. And then you continue down the road, and the same thing begins to happen. So you reach over to tweak it one more time. Now you're hearing it well enough, but you really want to hear what this guy has to say. It's really exciting. So you give it one more twist. Boom, it's gone. Yeah. And you fool around trying to bring it back, and you can't bring it in. Now, the reason for that is that there was a resonance frequency shared between those little metal plates that were the tuner inside the radio, and you turn them and you get them in the right position, and it has a certain characteristics associated with the resonance of it that matched what was in the studio, but you couldn't bring it in any better anymore. You turn a car around and you go back, and you can bring it back in. But the same thing's going to happen when you start getting at a distance from it. Now, I love that analogy because I think of our minds, I think we have kind of a mental radio. And the signal that we put out will match the signal, if you will, or the frequency spectrum of some particular object. It's been said by all of the great Enlightenment teachers that the universe has two facets to it as far as we're concerned. There's the material universe, which is relative. There's the time-space environment within which we live, move, and experience our humanness. But that resides within the absolute, which is devoid of time and space. And if there is no time and space, how can anything be made in that? It takes time. It takes space. It can't. Well then, where is everything? It just is. Every thought that you can have, every creation that you can come up with in your mind already exists within that. Now this is a hard one to accept, but just take it and work with the idea for a little bit. Thomas Troward, the great 19th century metaphysician, upon which so much of what we teach is based, made the comment that there is a divine prototype for everything that you can imagine in this field of infinite possibilities. Now think about this. We here in this relative realm, and everything evolves out of that or is projected out of that into the time-space arena within which we live. You begin to formulate an idea about what it is you want to experience. And I think we have to be very careful here. It can't just be anything. You can't be formulating the idea that you want somebody to come along and bump off your mother-in-law. That's out of integrity. Not only that, it is inconsistent with the natural order of things. So it's got to be good stuff, to the very best that you understand. But you come up with an idea. That idea has a vibration associated with it, or a spectrum of vibrations, a spectrum of frequencies. And that idea goes out just like a pebble you drop on a smooth pond, and the waves go out to encompass the whole pond. We're talking about an infinite pond now. And so we kind of drop our thought, that involves our belief and our acceptance of the possibility, and it goes out into the sea of cosmic mind, if you want to call it that. At the same time, whatever it is that you're looking for exists as a possibility in this field of infinite possibilities, and it is sending its signal out. And what happens when the two encounter each other? Just like that. It comes together. There is a locking in. Isn't this exciting? I mean, this turns me on when I think about it. I wonder why I had to wait to have somebody else tell me about my model for me to be indignant that they knew what I figured out a long time ago, only to be re-inspired at what the possibilities are here. It's just absolutely incredible. And it works both ways. It's almost like there's a radio signal going on out there, or at the very least there is a field around an idea, and the field around our idea. These vibrations seek each other, and what I am seeking is seeking me. That's absolutely incredible. Does that make sense to you? Or is this stuff just kind of boring and a little bit too airy-fairy? All right. Okay, that's, I think, the way this works. But you know something? It doesn't matter. And whether you understand it or followed any of that I just said, it doesn't matter. Take as a working premise that your thoughts create an attractive field. Your beliefs will automatically establish this kind of a resonance in the universe that is going to pull to you whatever it is that you seek, if it is in integrity and consistent with the natural order of things. Now, the process by which this happens, and we talked about this last week, that was a whole part of last week's sermon. The process or the formula is very simple. Ask, believe, receive, or accept. Receiving and accepting really are the same thing. Now, I'm not going to go over last week's sermon. You want that? Get the tape or the CD that's on that. But there's something that's very important about asking. If you're going to ask that the universe delivers something to you, or the means by which you can achieve or accomplish or acquire what that is, a lot of times that's where people go wrong. They ask for the $1 million to show up on their doorstep, and maybe that's possible. I don't know. In the realm of infinite possibilities, I suppose it is. But I think I'd rather find out what I need to do in order for that to happen. So there are things to do. But if you're going to ask, it's nice to know what it is you want. That sounds silly, doesn't it? But the fact of the matter is that most people spend an inordinate amount of time on what it is they don't want. And you remember that statement that's been made over and over. I've made it over and over from this pulpit since I've been here. And I've been here just about 5 years now. The power in the universe flows to the focus of your attention, and it is a manifesting power. So, if you're always thinking about what you don't want, what are you reproducing over and over and over in your life? What is that thought form? What is that thought frequency that you're creating doing? It's attracting more of the very same thing. So you need to know what it is you want. And knowing what it is you want, depending on how you're going to go about doing this, can be very well that which leads you to really a deep belief. Let me give you an example. I have a friend that I haven't seen or talked with in about 5 years. His name is Larry James. I met him in Tulsa, Oklahoma about 30 years ago when I first went into the ministry, maybe about 28 years ago. And Larry was a real estate agent doing very, very well for himself, but had a fantastic inquiring mind about the way things worked. He was always taking workshops and seminars on success principles and that sort of thing. And at one of the seminars that he went to, he was told about the importance of sitting down and writing all of the things that he wanted to experience or have, to acquire, whatever, or do in his life. And the instructions in this seminar was for him to go home and sit down with a pad of paper and writing instruments, and write out all the things that he wanted. So he went home, and he got his yellow pad, and he started working on this. And finally he got to the point where he was categorizing them in the various important areas of his life. Health and relationships and family and career and recreation and health and so on down the line. Most of us can break down our wants and needs to 6 or 8 of these categories. He started writing in the early afternoon, and he finally stopped about 6 o'clock in the morning. And he was so jazzed because it was like going through this process. He was tapping into the infinite field of possibilities that was him. Remember, we are in it and we are one with it. And it just kept pouring out and pouring out and pouring out. So he called me up later in the morning, like 8 o'clock or so, to tell me what had happened. And he was jazzed, and he went right back to his workshop and continued with that. Now, Larry was a very successful real estate agent. Realtor, I guess he was a realtor. And, but he didn't want to do it anymore. So, what is he doing today? The thing that he discovered by going through this process more than anything else. He wanted to be a presenter, a workshop presenter, and he wanted to work in the arena of love. So he's written several books on love and does workshops all over the country. He's remarried, and along in the process he got rid of a wife. I mean, there's some good in everything. No, I don't mean that. But this is what can happen. And can you see how that can build you to a belief? Can you see how your excitement in putting together all of these ideas and looking at the possibilities for you can be the very thing that says yes, 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 and you begin to build a belief. That's incredible, folks. Now, the next thing, belief, we see how the asking part and the defining of what it is you really want can work for you. And I don't want to say a lot more about that except to coattail on to what I said a moment ago. Allow yourself to want what you want. Now think about that. I'm going to allow myself to want what I want. Not put all kinds of contingencies around this. Not have a bunch of qualifications or caveats. No, I'm going to let myself want what I want. But some of you look at it and you say, but there are things I want and I know I can't ever have. Really? Do you know that? Well, you say, of course, I just don't see any way that this can happen. How is it going to come about? Forget it, folks. Forget about it. Good Sicilian saying. Forget about it. The reason that you can forget it, I'm Sicilian, by the way. The reason you can say that is it is not your job to know the how. That is the job of the universe. That is the job of Spirit, of God. Your job is to know the what and to be very, very clear on it. And when you go through the ask and the believe, it just naturally leads you into the acceptance. If you can get to the point of really believing it, all you have to do and say is, and I accept it as so right now. Now, because I'm running out of time, I have to cut this a little bit short. I got 72 seconds left. Knowing all this stuff that we're talking about here this morning, you should be able to go out and begin the process of transforming your life and turning it around. And you can, and you will. There's value in what you've gotten this morning and what I have said, and I know there has been for me. However, many of us have years and years and years of stuff that is accumulated and built up, and it keeps intruding from our subconscious, our old beliefs of limitation and lack, an imbalance in our life. And sometimes it's so hard to see how we can possibly be any different or have any more or whatever in our lives. And that's where it is important, I think, to have some processes, some methods, some techniques that we can do. And there are some essentials for being able to build that spiritual momentum that carries you forward. At the same time, you're beginning to erode away all of the old patterns. And there are 5 things that are necessary to ensure that you can come into alignment or attunement with the attractive field of all possibilities. And that's what I'm going to talk about next week. Tune in again the same time next week. Better to use an automatic tuning system, though. Let's quiet ourselves. Come to center and know that there is a power and presence in the universe, and that power and presence is unlimited in its extent. And it is the only thing out of which everything has come into expression, and I am an expression of it. And the degree to which I can surrender to the power and presence of God within me is the degree to which I can experience and express all that I am here to do. In my surrenderment, I do not give up and allow the world or the people within the world, the forces within the world, to manipulate me. But rather, I give myself over totally to the processes of love and goodness, intelligence and creativity to work in and through my life as I allow it. Now, this is your prayer. I speak it in the first person, but this is your prayer. All the more so when we realize not only am I and the Father one, as Jesus said, but you and I are one. We are all one together. So take just a moment now to go into the silence and call up just one thing that you would like to see transformed in your life, whether it's something to acquire, whether it's a healing to have, whether it is a project to complete, something that you want to achieve, whatever that is, one thing that is your desire in this moment. And define it very clearly in your mind. Just look at it. Don't do anything with it. Just look at it. And if you don't completely have it, that's okay. Say whatever that is being revealed right now, and take these words that I speak as your words. I am one with the presence. I am one with the power. What it is at that unlimited, infinite level, I am at this specific, particular level. I am eternally connected with it, and I draw into my life everything I need for the manifestation of this desire. The love, the joy, the health and happiness, the intelligence and creativity, all of these are in me and are unlimited. I draw upon them and allow it to pour forth, providing me with everything I need to create the attraction for my specific desire right now. Mother, Father, loving God, I truly give thanks for this realization, for this revelation. I rejoice that right now it is done. It is over. It is complete. In the mind of God, it exists. I am open. I am receptive. I am accessible to its movement into my life. I accept it as so. I know that it is so, and so it is.
Welcome to the Austin Center for Spiritual Living. This recording is of a talk presented on the morning of March 18th, 2007 by Rev.Dr. Imprescia. The title of the talk is The Law of Attraction.
Yeah, thank you. Step by step, taking it one step at a time, one day at a time. Sounds familiar?